Prince Jones was a fellow student of mine at Howard University. He was a tall, beautiful young man. He hailed from a prosperous family, a family that had not always been prosperous. His mother, was the child of sharecroppers, had worked her, way up through life out of, poverty in Louisiana, and had risen to become a prominent radiologist. Prince was in Prince George's County, Maryland, driving. It was late at night. He had just dropped off his young daughter. He was going to see his fiancée, and he was in a Jeep, an SUV. The SUV he was in was being followed, as it turned out, by the police, the Prince George's County Police. And I'm in Baltimore, so you guys know about the reputation of the Prince George's County Police. I don't need to give any sort of lectures on that. The gentleman who was following him had come to work that night as an undercover police officer and had dressed up as a drug dealer. So he was, literally dressed as a criminal, to appear as a criminal. He was in an unmarked car. He thought Prince Jones was someone else who, he was supposed to be doing surveillance on. He tracked Prince Jones from Prince George's County, Maryland, through Washington, D.C., and into Fairfax, Virginia, where, as far as I'm concerned, he effectively executed him. And the story he tells, because he's the only witness, and he's the only person whose version of events we actually have, the story he tells is that once they got to Fairfax, they got into a dark cul-de-sac, and Prince rammed his car. And he said before Prince rammed his car, he got out of the car, and he pulled the gun on Prince, and he identified himself as a police officer, but he didn't produce his badge. By his own admission, he didn't produce his badge. By his testimony, Prince got back in the car, and into his truck, and rammed the police officer's car, and the police officer shot and killed him. This happened in 2000. I believe my son was about a month old at that point. Dr. Jones greeted me at the door. She was lovely, polite, brown. She appeared to be somewhere in that range between 40 and 70 years, when it is difficult to precisely ascertain a black person's precise age. She was well composed, given the subject of our conversation, and for most of the visit, I struggled to separate how she actually felt from what I felt she must be feeling. What I felt right then was that she was smiling through pained eyes, that the reason for my visit spread sadness like a dark quilt over the whole house. Dr. Jones was reserved. She was what people once referred to as a lady, and in that sense reminded me of my grandmother, who was a single mother in the projects but always spoke as though she had nice things. And when Dr. Jones described her motive for escaping the dearth that marked the sharecropper life of her father and all the others around her, when she remembered herself saying, "I'm not going to live like this," I saw the iron in her eyes, and I remembered the iron in my grandmother's eyes. You must barely remember her by now. You were 6 when she died. I remember her, of course, but by the time I knew her exploits, how, for instance, she scrubbed white people's floors during the day and went to school at night, were legend. But I still could feel the power and the rectitude that propelled her out of the projects and into home ownership. It was the same power I felt in the presence of Dr. Jones. When she was in 2nd grade, she and another child made a pact that they would both become doctors, and she held up her end of the bargain. But first, she integrated the high school in her town. At the beginning, she fought the white children who insulted her. At the end, they voted her class president. She ran track. It was a great entree, she told me, but it only brought her so far into that world. At football games, the other students would cheer the star black running back. And then when a black player on the other team got the ball, they'd yell, "Kill that nigga, kill that nigga." They would yell this sitting right next to her, as though she really were not there. She gave Bible recitations as a child, and she told me the story of her recruitment into the business. Her mother took her to audition for the junior choir. Afterward, the choir director said, "Honey, I think you should talk." She was laughing lightly now, not uproariously, still in control of her body. And she spoke like a black woman, with all the pain that undercuts those exact feelings. I now wondered about her daughter, who'd been recently married. There was a picture on display of this daughter and her new husband. Dr. Jones was not optimistic. She was intensely worried about her daughter bringing a son into America because she could not save him. She could not secure his body from the ritual violence that claimed her son. She compared America to Rome. She said she thought the glory days of this country had long ago passed, and even those glory days were sullied because they had been built on the bodies of others. And we can't get the message, she said. We don't understand that we are embracing our deaths. She said that Prince had never taken to material things. He loved to read. He loved to travel. But when he turned 23, she bought him a Jeep. She had a huge purple bow put on it. She told me that she still could see him there, looking at the Jeep and simply saying, "Thank you." Without interruption, she added, "And that was the Jeep he was killed in."